I can single-handedly, without a doubt, absolutely for sure, tell you the best engine to have in any vehicle to drive around the world. Without a doubt. It is the one that is in your truck. If your goal is to drive around and see the world, don't worry about swapping your engine or changing your car. Just go. Spend your money on fuel, spend your money on exploring, and have an adventure. That's it. The one that's in your car. Simple as that. But if you are a crazy, impractical person like me that likes to build custom vehicles to drive around the world for the sake of fun, then welcome to your engine masterclass.
If you're new here, welcome. This is Toyota World Runners. We built the world's first Land Cruiser Chinook in 100 days back in 2022 here at WESTCAN Overland, and then we drove it from Canada to Patagonia and back across Canada. We're now rebuilding the truck with all the knowledge we gained on the road, and this is the thought process of choosing a future-proof engine for international overland travel. If you are new, you've got over 100 build series and adventure films to catch up on. If you're an OG, welcome back.
In this video, I want to talk about the best engine for overlanding. Best is obviously subjective. Gas versus diesel. Does it really matter? Is it really important? Will it make a difference? Fuel economy. Does it matter? Will it make a difference? And the one big problem with our truck that we have told no one about yet. So stick around. This is going to be action-packed. I want to make this as useful as possible for people that are considering doing the Pan America Highway, driving the Silk Road, driving around Africa, doing any kind of international travel, or you just want to build a really functional off-road overland vehicle that hopefully you wouldn't have to touch for a few decades. That's the goal, to make something that's future-proof. So, let's begin. With the engines that have been most recommended on our channel. We're going to start with gas, petroleum, and let me first tell you what we have in our truck. It is a V6 5VZ FE. It makes 190 horsepower. It's not a powerhouse. It drove the entire Pan America Highway with pretty much no issues. We blew one spark plug wire, and everything to do with the engine, other than that spark plug wire, was fine. It got an average of 12 to 14 miles to the gallon, 6 kilometers per liter, and it was as low as, I think, 7 or 8 miles per gallon off-road at high altitude. So it affected our range a lot. These engines pose some advantages. Top engines, the 1UZ, the 2UZ, and the 3UZ were probably the most recommended to us. These are all Toyota V8s. The 1UZ is an all aluminum V8, so it's about as light as it gets. It's a fairly small package, and it makes pretty good power. The 2UZ was made more for trucks. It has an iron block. It produces more torque than the 1UZ in stock form. And it's a solid engine. People call it the million-mile Toyota engine for good reason. The 3UZ replaced the 2UZ. They went back to all aluminum. It's super lightweight, and in stock form, it makes the most power out of any of these. Now, there's a couple of different versions of the 1UZ. The later model with VVTi requires premium fuel. And for us, and I think for you guys, anything that requires premium fuel, if you're going internationally, it's gonna be no bueno. It's just not gonna work because unreliable fuel is common. So that pretty much ixnays the 3UZ because it also requires premium. There are certain models of the 1UZ, like I said, that require premium. The early 1UZ is probably the best, the most stout for our intents and purposes. It does have some issues with the computer, but there's a lot of advantages to that engine, the 1 and the 2UZ. The Lexus versions say they require premium, but the 4Runner and Tundra versions of the 2UZ do not require premium, so that's a bit of a gray area. So I would consider both of these engines to be fairly reliable choice for international overlanding, although you're going to have a V8. So it's probably unlikely that we would improve our fuel economy, but we would have more fun and we wouldn't be potentially overworking our engine. Our truck weighs fully loaded 6,500 pounds, and the gross vehicle weight rating for the engine and transmission that's in the truck is about 5,300 pounds. So, we're anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 pounds over the max weight that engine should be able to pull. Does that make a difference? Maybe. There's a lot of overworked 22 REs that I know of that are in motorhomes. So, who knows? The 5VZ supercharged. The supercharged version of the engine that's in our truck. Great engine. I know lots of people that have this engine on rev limiter every single weekend for years, and it's fine. They're awesome. We could bolt a supercharger onto our engine, gain 60 horsepower, and carry on. Again, it requires premium fuel. So that's a no for us. Now, the 1FZ is the engine that would have came in a later model gas 80 series in North America. They're actually all over South America as well, in a heap of different Land Cruisers. Very international friendly engine. They're all over the world. Guys build them, they turbocharge them. Very stout engine. They are, however, a bit of a hog on fuel. Worse than either of these from my research and from talking to people that have them. A 1FZ in an 80 series, which is basically what we have, will basically net you 8 to 10 miles to the gallon, maybe 12 if you're lucky. So while it is a good engine, it is reliable. There's one other issue. It's a very tall 4.5 liter engine. So we would have a heck of a time trying to fit it in our engine bay vertically because we have the Chinook front end. If it was an 80 series, no problem. But because our hood is sloped to the front and it's overall just narrower or shorter, that would be a problem for us. Not to mention the poor fuel economy. The 1GR was recommended a lot by you guys. This engine is the V6 that would have come in 4th gen 4Runners and 2nd gen Tacomas. Straight up awesome engine. This engine is also widely produced in Troopies around the world, Land Cruiser troop carriers. It's very international, was all over South America. I know it's all over Asia and Africa. Awesome, awesome engine. It makes good power for a V6, and it's not terrible on fuel. It's also all aluminum, which means it's lighter than most other options. The issue that I found with it is nobody's swapping them. I haven't found almost any reliable sources of people putting a 1GR in something else. I think I found 2 people that have done it. There's a lot of electronics, there's a lot of sensors. The transmissions, I haven't found any solid information on it. So this to me is a gray area. I don't know enough about it to consider it. I know in its stock form, in a 4Runner or a Tacoma or a Troopy, it's awesome. Great engine. For us, I'm very hesitant to put a check mark beside it because I don't know enough about it and I can't find enough information on it. So if you want to sell me on a 1GR, please do. Literally, if you have one and you want to help me swap it, maybe. But I think there's better options for us. But for other people, this is a great option to consider. You're missing one, bro. You forgot an LS? No? You're gonna write all of these engines on here and not talk about the greatest engine ever made? Oh. The gift, God's gift to the world? Bro? Why are you even making this video? You just I considered it. It's just, done. Well, yeah, they're good.
Option.
Sure.
Like it's just nonsense.
I don't know, man. I just can't see
Didn't really
whatever
want to.
one-us, two-us, like that's not
Anyways.
even, shouldn't even be a consideration. There's
Not
literally
truck,
just,
but
yeah, LS or nothing, man. Okay, well, I mean, that's
Whatever, dude.
There's certainly a lot of information on the LS swaps.
Your channel, I
all of
guess.
them.
I just,
And if we were staying in North America,
at least give these people some
probably
good
a good
information.
option. I don't think there's a lot of them internationally
Yeah.
yet.
Wow.
Although with the rise of the LS swap clubs, there maybe will be. There's also the 4.3 V6 Chev, which is a good engine. I don't trust that guy's opinion though, so that's basically I'm gonna call it on that one. Moving on to diesels. Diesels, a very, very good option. It could easily be argued that diesel is more accepted around the world. A lot of people thought that it would be in Latin America. We found that it wasn't. We didn't really have a problem getting fuel anywhere. There were some remote off-road routes where we were required to have a 600, 700, 800 kilometer range, but the actual acquisition of fuel wasn't a problem for us. It may be in other places in the world, but it's, easy to assume that diesels are more economical. Does a diesel swap make sense? Like the cost of a swap to the benefit of the fuel economy? That's something we're going to touch on in a bit after we discuss what diesel options I would consider and why. Highly recommended diesel engine is the Volkswagen TDI, and I don't have a reason to say it's not a great swap. However, our truck is 6,500 pounds. These engines are 1.9 to 2 liters, and I know you can make good power out of them. You can tune them, crank up the fuel, crank up the boost, and guys are making 250, 300 horsepower, which is like 400 foot-pounds of torque out of these little tiny engines. For me, I would rather have a larger engine doing less work than a smaller engine doing more work. Like if I'm gonna turbo something, I wanna be making like max boost and peak power well before 20 PSI. And to do that, it just doesn't happen in CDI. You're gonna be running 35 plus pounds of boost to make that kind of power. And while some people may think that's reliable for international travel, I don't. I think they're great engines. I think in a more like domestic swap or weekend warrior type truck, I think the TDIs are super popular for good reason. For us, I think it's too small. The OM617, I've heard called the Iron Cockroach. It's a 5-cylinder turbo diesel made by Mercedes. I actually had one in a first-gen pickup, and it was awesome. It was felt like driving a train. It was about as slow as a slug until it was in boost, and then it was maybe as fast as, a cockroach. They don't make a ton of power. They're very reliable. You can run them on almost anything. I've heard of guys running them up to a 50% mixture on waste oil with just a screen filter. So very apocalypse proof. You just have to spend a lot of money to make decent power out of them. And even after that, they're not a powerhouse. That's not really what they're for. But as far as, being economical, it's pretty good. They did come in heavy cars. So there might be an argument to put it in ours. For me, it's just, we wouldn't get the power. Like you would have to spend so much money just to get even 200 horsepower out of one of those from my research. And that's just, to me, that's not money well spent when there's clearly much better options out there. So for me, the OM617 is out. The M57 is the BMW straight 6 3-liter diesel, mostly found in cars and X5s. And it's a performance powerhouse. These engines are stupid fast. When they're tuned and deleted, you can do like almost nothing else to them, and they're like a freaking rocket. What they also are is common rail. So what that means that they use ultra high pressure fuel rail to deliver the fuel into the cylinder. It's a more modern technology than these older diesels, and that comes with computers and a lot of electronics. That doesn't mean it's not reliable, and that doesn't mean that it's a bad engine or a bad engine choice. The fact is there is more going on, which means there's more things to go wrong, there's more things to understand, and that's what hesitates me on that engine. For me, whatever engine I put in the truck, I want to understand completely, which is why our 5VZ was a great choice. I knew like everything about it, you know. It's also a very simple engine, and I think a superpower when you're traveling to remote places is knowing everything you can about your car. We met plenty of people on the road that had brand new vehicles that they bought because they figured that they weren't going to have any issues with them, and they broke down. You know, brand new Sprinter vans that needed engine rebuild in Mexico. That's just the, you know, that's the price to pay, price to play sometimes. And for a lot of people, that's okay. For me, I want to know as much as I can and have a simple system. So to me, simplicity is synonymous with reliability. And the M57 is, without a doubt, a more complicated engine than others, but it is a performance powerhouse. So if you're building for power and fun and awesome fuel economy, like seriously impressive fuel economy for having that much power, the M57 is a very, very good choice. For us, it edges to the unknown too far for me, and the new age common rail thing, I'm just not confident enough in for me. So for us, the M57 is out. The OM605/OM606 is a 5 and 6 cylinder straight 6 3-liter diesel from Mercedes, and it's a direct injection diesel, which means the fuel is directly injected into the cylinder. There's no pre-chamber. Some of these other engines, which we'll discuss, have like a pre-cup, which means that it basically preheats the fuel before it injects it into the cylinder. This is a direct injection motor, and what I love about this option is that you can run a high performance mechanical injection pump and make a lot of power fully mechanically. So what I mean by that is this is basically a one-wire engine. You need your starter wire, your battery, and then basically your dummy lights and sensors, and away you go. So the wiring of that engine is light years simpler than like the M57. You can make good power out of them too. There are a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of forums of guys drag racing the OM606. Some people have called it the 2JZ of the diesel world because it revs so high. It's a bit of a weapon. The challenge with this engine is acquisition of it. Internationally, parts are much easier to come by. Mercedes diesels are in almost every work truck in Latin America that we saw. And while it might not be a 605 or a 606, they're all very similar. So whether you can find the parts, you can easily find somebody to work on the engine. Yes, I think I already said it makes great power. I think you know that. And you can get good fuel economy out of it. They're also very robust. And this is one of the considerations for me for our truck. If we're going to venture away from Toyota, this would probably be my top consideration. Fully mechanical, great power, great fuel economy, international parts availability. North America, a little challenging, but we're in 2024. You can buy things online. You can get parts shipped almost anywhere in the world. So that speaks true for almost any of these engines. So this gets a green circle from TWR as a valid consideration. Now, into Toyota diesels, there are 6 here. The 1HZ is what I would say the iron cockroach of the Toyota world. It's in every freaking mine truck pretty much in the world. We saw them all across Canada. They're still making brand new 1HZ engines, which I think came out in 85. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking decades, like 30 plus years of the same engine. Yes, they made refinements to it, but this engine is long-standing reliability pretty much everywhere in the world. Does, however, not make a lot of power. And the bigger thing about it is it's bigger. It's a 4.2 liter engine, which means it's very tall. And our truck is very short. The engine bay is. So it's a tough one, but it's honestly just too tall. And you're gonna hear that a few more times, because the ultimate engine that I would want, if I could have, win the lottery, figure it out, put any engine you want in, would be this one. The 1HD FTE. There's the 1HDT, which is mechanical, and then there's the FTE, which is electronically controlled. If you throw a bunch of money at them, it's an absolute beast. This is the engine that Shauno has in the Dirty 30. He has a 1HDT in Sooty. Jason has one in his 80, and they're awesome. It's an incredibly robust, reliable Toyota engine. It's just too damn big. It's too freaking big to put in our truck. And I could go to the ends of the earth to make it fit. We could, cut the firewall, put a hood scoop, put a bigger lift, and run a dry sump oil pan. I took the measurements, and we can make it work. But that's just really not practical, unfortunately. So, as sad as it is, I have to put a red cross on the 1HDT. That brings us to the smaller Toyota diesels, the 3 liter or less. I didn't bother putting the 2L or the 2LTE engines here for what I think is obvious reasons. Cracked heads, overheating, less than no power. Sorry if you've got one, I'm sure they're great in a stock truck. The 1KZ is a 3 liter 4-cylinder indirect injection engine, which means it has the pre-cup, which just creates more heat. These engines are less prone to overheating than the 2L, 2LTE engines, but it's not uncommon for overheating issues. It can be avoided with waterless coolant, big intercooler, big radiator. New Zealand guys love this engine. I've been on a lot of Kiwi forums where guys are just boosting them to the world and love it. You can spend a lot of money and make them reliable and cool and fun, but it's a lot of money. And to me, like, the cost to benefit ratio isn't really there for me. One of the things I don't prefer about it is it's for a diesel, it has dissimilar metals. The block is iron and the head is aluminum. So the metals heat at different rates, which can cause warping. It has a lot of gray areas that concern me. Yes, you could build it and make it reliable and powerful. It would fit in our engine bay. Parts availability is also fairly good internationally. To me, it's just not enough. If I'm gonna spend the money on doing a diesel swap, I want it to freaking slap. And to me, someone's gonna argue this, but it just doesn't slap hard enough. So, now, the successor of the 1KZ is the 1KD. Different. The 1KD can make a buttload of power. If you follow any Aussie channels, TJ Mack, he just put a 1KD in his little Hilux, and it's freaking nuts. It's nuts, like 500 foot-pounds of torque nuts. So there's certainly some improvements that they made here. But if you remember, like the M57 with the common rail and the electronics, it's the same story with the 1KD. I'm not saying they're not reliable. I'm just saying there's more stuff going on. And like I said before, to me, simplicity is synonymous with reliability, and with the 1 kd and the 2 kd after that, there's just too much going on. Common rail diesels are absolutely the way of the future. In 20, 30 years from now, you'll be very hard pressed to find indirect injection diesel, or even, hopefully not, but even just a direct injection diesel. So there's just, too much going on for me personally for a rig. But that's not to say it wouldn't be for you. The engine, these come in newer Hiluxes, and people are driving those all over the world. In stock form, I think you were pretty good to go. I will say, when we were in a shop in Argentina, diagnosing our spark plug wire, we saw newer Hiluxes coming in and out of that shop all day long, popping the hood, doing diagnostics, trying to figure out sensors. There was just literally daily, just a rotating door of Hiluxes coming in for engine lights and diagnostics. So there's a lot going on. For us, that's a no. What I think we really need to discuss is a diesel swap actually worth it? Is there a cost to benefit ratio that makes sense? Because to me, you're spending way more money up front to put in a diesel, but you're going to get better fuel economy, and diesel might be a bit cheaper. So I've actually did the calculations. I did the calculations on, is a diesel swap worth it? So let's talk about it. Before we move on to my calculation experiment, I'm going to boldly tell you that these two engines are my top gas choices for our Chinook. We will talk about the benefits of keeping the engine that's in the truck when we discuss the big problem, which we'll talk about at the end. Other than the engine that's in our truck, the 1UZ and the 2UZ are my gas considerations, and the OM 605/606 are my diesel considerations. So for our calculation cost experiment, we have to make a few assumptions. Going off the website globalpetrolprices.com, which you can look up the price of gas or diesel or whatever in any country, we found it to be pretty accurate in Latin America when we were planning ahead. The global average price of fuel is what we're going to use for this experiment. For gas, it's $1.28. For diesel, $1.20. To my American friends, I am using liters for this experiment and kilometers, but I will put it in US dollars. We're mixed up here in the north, but I am trying to stick to the metric system as much as possible. Cost to build will play a role in this calculation experiment, and I'm assuming the 1 to 2UZ at $4,000 build cost. That's including getting the engine, doing a timing belt water pump. I would put headers on it and probably a computer and a tune. So I'm assuming that around $4,000. For the OM 606, it's a higher acquisition price here in North America. And I would be doing things like an upgraded injection pump, a bigger turbo, an intercooler, and all the piping. I think safely to assume a high quality build to be around $10,000. I believe these are pretty accurate numbers. Obviously, this can change with your ability to fab things and your ability to scavenge marketplace. With these assumptions, I will bring you to the calculations. Don't freak out, okay? Oh God, they're not there. They're back here. Okay, this is our formula. I'm not a mathematician, but I have been through this. I know it works. It's a little complicated. If you are a mathematician, then please feel free to simplify this into one formula. But this is what we've got. And after we input the numbers of our gas versus diesel engines, we will have the total cost of a trip. So, quick overview. Our kilometers per liter times our tank size in liters will give us our range in kilometers. The journey, your trip length, whatever you're gonna do, say you're gonna drive the Silk Road or do the Pan America Highway, divide that by your range, your tank in kilometers. It's gonna give you the number of tanks that's gonna take you to do that journey. Then you can take the number of tanks, times that by your tank size, and get the total liters to drive the distance of your journey. Then we will take the total liters times the price per liter, and we'll be left with the cost of the journey. So I'm going to input the numbers of our trip down the Pan America Highway and back across Canada, of what we did with our gas engine, and I'm going to do the same thing if we had had a diesel, and we will compare. Stand by. You didn't have to stand by long because that's the magic of editing. I've inputted the numbers from our trip down the Pan America Highway with our V6 Chinook, which averaged 6 kilometers per liter with a 158 liter tank, average range of 948 kilometers, total trip length 50,000 kilometers divided by a range, 53 tanks of gas. Doesn't seem like a lot. Number of tanks times tank size, total liters, 8,374 liters, times the price per liter. Our total fuel cost, average, there's obviously some assumptions like we average the price of fuel, $10,718. So what we can conclude from this is that traveling is cheaper than living in Canada. So let's put the numbers in if we had a diesel. I'm going to assume an MPG for the diesel of 24 miles to the gallon, or about 10.2 kilometers per liter. Okay, so with our diesel numbers, 10 kilometers per liter, same tank size, a range increases to 1,580 kilometers, almost over 1,000 miles. Then we get 32 tanks for our 50,000 kilometer journey, which gives us a total liters of 5,056, and slightly lower average price of diesel, bringing the total cost of a 50,000 kilometer journey with that fuel economy to $6,067. That's a difference of $4,651 over a 50,000 kilometer journey. Obviously, these are averages. That's a significant difference for sure. However, the cost to do the diesel swap, we're assuming, was $10,000, which is a 6,000 kilometer difference. So if we put that together, our $4,000 savings over the long term, it was actually still more expensive to have the diesel for a 50,000 kilometer journey. Now, if that was double, let's say 100,000 kilometers, then things start to get more interesting. Then the cost to benefit ratio actually makes sense. I think we can safely assume that with a diesel, if we want to make it great, that it's going to cost more to build. And that's just more money up front to get better fuel economy, that after 60, 70,000 kilometers, the cost to benefit ratio actually kicks in, and the money that you're saving on fuel is actually now saving you money from the money that you put into the build. Now, all of that is fine and dandy. For us, the money is not the biggest concern. There's really just one big thing that we need to solve for and that we need to create. And before I tell you about what the problem is, there's pretty much one target that we need to hit for the right engine, and there's two benefits that we would like. And I'm going to draw a little Venn diagram to explain this. You may have seen this Venn diagram before. We have cheap, powerful, and reliable, but you can only pick two. So if you want it cheap and powerful, it's not going to be reliable. If you want reliable and cheap, it's not going to be powerful. And if you want powerful and reliable, it's not going to be cheap. There's really only one thing here that matters when we're talking about international travel. Come on, you already said it. Reliable. This is really all we care about. If we can get powerful, that's awesome. And there's one other thing that I think that, we're considering with this experiment, and that's economy. How fuel efficient is it? But as you saw with our little thought experiment with our assumptions, it takes a while for the benefits to kick in. But if you have the money up front to build a more fuel efficient vehicle, it certainly makes sense. If money's a concern, if you're made of money, then, who cares? Put an LS in it, do burnouts the whole way to South America, and roll smoke off your credit card. That's cool for some people. Really what we want is reliable, and that's actually what we got with the 5VZ. It gave us no issues, but we're here to do things differently. We're here to do things fun, and we're here to build an epic vehicle and tell an epic story. Our use case is not the practical homeowner wants to sell his stuff and drive around the world. It's not, ultra budget friendly, drive my Tercel to Russia. It's somewhere in the middle. We didn't sell a house and we don't want to drive a Tercel to Russia. So I want this with a side of these. So that brings us to, I think, 2 options, which are the 3 options being the more powerful and fuel efficient, awesome OM605 or 606, the more readily available, good power, less fuel economy 1 or 2UZ, or the venerable, the reliable one that we have that would cost us the least amount of money, be the least amount of effort, and has already driven to South America. I think you know where I'm leaning. But it's just not that simple. And that brings us to the big problem, which I will now divulge on another diagram. Okay, stay with me here. I know this is a caveman drawing. We're looking top down on a very basic chassis. But what I've highlighted here is the axles, the transmission, and the drive shaft. This is a normal vehicle, and the drive shaft, top down, we'll call this east and west. The top down east to west is straight. It's vertical. There's no variance. What we have is, this is the same thing, east to west. We have, because of our V6, a centered output on the T-case and an offset rear diff, which basically means that the U-joints on this side and this side are dealing with 2 different planes. On a normal car, in a normal situation, a normal truck, your U-joint deals with 2 planes, north and south. It's only working in one plane. And that's what a U-joint is designed to do. The output on your T-case and the output on your pinion are meant to be parallel. You can do different things if you're in a rock crawling scenario, like in the Yeti, for instance, where you can angle this pinion to point directly at the T-case. So this angle becomes 0, whereas right now it's, say, well, whatever, I'm not going to guess. And all of the angle is up here, taken out by a double cardan or double CV shaft. This is not that simple. We ran with this setup through the whole Pan Am. and we actually wore out 4 U-joints. 3 in the back, 1 in the front. The front was unrelated, so say 3 U-joints. Now, is it the worst thing ever? No. Was it annoying? Yeah, that's premature failure of a U-joint because it's dealing with too many angles. It's dealing with east, west, and north, south. The only way to make this work scientifically in a perfect world is if this angle here and this angle here, if the east-west angle and the north-south angle are the same, identical. Because then the U-joint is experiencing, the U-joint doesn't care whether it's east-west or north-south. It just knows that it's on an angle, and if it's just affecting one, then it's fine. But when it's affected on 2 planes, my suspicion, my guess, my hypothesis, and my reality is that we go through U-joints. So, the way to solve for this is 2 things. We keep the engine that we have, but that means that I have to center the rear axle, which is a whole lot of fab work or a custom housing, but that would put our differential in the middle and we would have a straight drive shaft and happy days. So that would involve, new link brackets, brake lines, everything to do with the rear axle would have to be new. The other option is roll with the offset diff and put a Land Cruiser transmission and transfer case in and keep it all offset like it was in the 80 series from the factory. This problem makes the engine discussion much more challenging because I can do whatever I want. That's the tricky part. I except leave it the way it is. I can do whatever I want except leave it the way it is because I don't want to keep blowing U-joints. So I can put an OM606 in with the transmission that we have and blow it up because it's too much power, or put that in and have to build a custom rear axle with the centered setup, or I can put in the Land Cruiser one and keep it offset factory 80 series, or I can do it with the 2UZ. So I can do a 2UZ with a centered output and do the rear axle, or I can do the 2UZ with the Land Cruiser transmission. This is why I have made this video, and this is why I've been thinking about this for the past year on the road, because there are just different directions that have different problems, different advantages, and more work versus less work. And there isn't a best solution. Obviously, the best one is the one that we have, but the one that we have blows U-joints, and our lift is too great for me to do the rock crawler thing and point it at the T-case and just hope that it figures it out, because I've tried messing with it and it doesn't vibrate. It drives fine, but it'll wear out a U-joint in 15,000, 20,000 kilometers. I don't like that. So here we are. This is not our typical video, and this is a lot of information for those interested. I hope it gave you some amount of value, or at least entertainment. Now you know my thought process, where we're at, and have some tidbits of hopefully good advice to move forward with your project or future project. If you want to contribute to the chat, or if you want to know the engine that we have already purchased, you can join us on Patreon. Other than that, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and yeah, stay tuned, because we've already torn the Chinook apart. We have got farther than you know, so stick around, it's gonna get better. Do you think it all worked out? What do you think?
My vote?
There you go.
Or maybe LS.
She's been cheating on me with the LS guy.
Yeah. Bye.